All right, so we have 3 files to download today. These are data files. So let's go ahead and download these and put them all in the same location. Let's go ahead and get an Excel workbook open. We'll be starting from scratch on a blank workbook today. And I'm going to save this file in the same location where I downloaded those other files. So I think that's going to be in my downloads folder. I'm sure that's where it is. So I'm going to call this parse text file. Winter 22. Ooh, and an XLSM. Oh, this is open. Shoot. Save as, downloads, XLSM. Okay. And it's a little interesting. There we go. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of these files. Oh, it's .data, but this will open up in Notepad just fine. These are just text files. Open with. Oh, you're kidding me. Ah, there we go. Okay. This is actually, it used to be, when I first started teaching this class, I had a final project. So everyone had to find some project to do and do a substantial VBA development effort at the end of the semester. Then the college asked me to scale it up so we could teach more than 100 students at once, and that just wasn't possible in that setting. But take a look at this file and tell me something about it. Tell me something about this file. Suppose your boss gave you this file and said, Smithers, make some sense of this. What would you say? What do you got here? What is it? This is like some kind of summary page. Let's look at this one. Precipitation levels at different locations, and it looks like they're in Brazil. If we ask, Fabio, these look like names in Brazil? I'm not sure they're all from Brazil as I look at it, because I think if I look down some of these, still all Brazil? Yeah, there was one that looked like Colombia. I remember looking through this, but maybe there's someplace in Brazil called Colombia. Oh yeah, Colombia. What is that? This one's not Brazil. Oh, okay. So I'm not sure what that is. So, but anyway, yeah, it's precipitation levels. So if we kind of look here, we see, let's see, come up here to the top. So this is November. So on November, we say on November 7th, we got 14, millimeters of precipitation at Pirapora. And the next day we got 16, and there's a trace here and so forth. So we get some data here. Now, this seems like a really strange structure for a file. I mean, normally when we move data around, we want to do it in like a comma separated file or a tab separated file or some kind of standard file format. But that's not what this data is. This is something strange. So any idea, why this file looks this way? First thing is, it's not meant for a computer to read, it's meant for a human to read. And if we go back to the very early days of computing, it seems strange today, but you go back to the early 1980s, how many computers did you have at your company? One. Yeah, there was one computer. Well, there's definitely one computer that runs the business of the company. There may be by the early 1980s, you may have a few PCs in there that some guys got for doing budget analysis. But in terms of kind of computer that runs the company. There's one big computer. And how do you get your information? I mean, you might need sales reports. You might need to know what happened last week. We had printers that could print really fast, and they would print reams and reams and reams of paper every day. And there'd be some guy with a little cart who goes around every day and drops off your reports that you need to be able to manage your business. That's how you consumed information, is you got this report. And so what you're looking at is a structure that was meant to be printed. It was like, oh, okay, we're going to print this out, and then we're going to give it to someone to actually read. Now, we move the clock forward a decade. We're now in the early 90s. What's the likelihood that you've got a computer, like a computer that you use regularly in your business in the early 1990s? Pretty likely. Now we have computers networked to each other, and we're communicating back and forth with computers. By the early 2000s, of course, it's be strange to work in any kind of office business without having access to a computer. But we've got the old mainframe system that still is running the big, kind of running the day-to-day operations of the computer. And they probably aren't connected to our other network of personal computers that we've got running the business. So how are we going to get the information that program only ever imagined it was going to print out? How do we get that data out in such a way that it could be like emailed now, instead of printed on paper and mailed or delivered somewhere? And it turns out that the printers back in the day were really simple machines compared to the way that they are now. Like you would send it, you would send the number 65 to the printer, and it would print a capital A. You'd send 66, it would print a capital B, right? It's the ASCII table that you use to do that. You would send number 13, and it would send the carriage head, the print head back. You'd send a number 10. You send to number 10, and it would advance the paper one roll. I mean, it was this level of thing. And so someone got the bright idea. They said, well, listen, why don't we instead make a printer that instead of printing on paper, it prints to a file. So literally like a little printer that you could plug in, and it would print, so-called, the same information that used to go out to a printer, it would go into a text file. And then we could take that text file, and we could move it around, kind of in another network. And so that's where this file came from. And so it was, I don't know, maybe it was a decade ago that, the project that a student had was, my dad gets this data in this format, every week. And he has to process through hundreds of these pages of data. Surprising to say that there are still like huge amounts of data that are kind of organized in this way that still it kind of gets printed out and sent around in this way. So we get text files that we have to be able to parse. It's amazing, but still I would probably say like the majority of the mission critical systems that run the big corporations of America, they're still running on really old platforms. I have a colleague who teaches at the University of Tulsa. It's one of the few places in the nation that still teaches people to program in COBOL. And their undergraduate students go out and take jobs in the $120,000 to $150,000 annually to maintain COBOL, because what's happening to all the other old COBOL programmers? They're dying and they're retired. And there's just not that many people that are willing to kind of go into COBOL because they kind of see it as a dead language. There's no new development happening in COBOL today, but there's millions upon millions of lines that are still running that need to be maintained and so forth. Anyway, so our goal today is going to be to write a program that can look through an arbitrary number of these files. We'll probably just get one coded today, and be able to extract out the data, the raw data here. So what we see at the very top here, this is tells us what's the percentage of normal. So Fabio, how do we say this? Ministerias. Is this like a region? Like a state? And then these are these cities inside the state? Okay, so I'm here in this state, and I'm at this particular city received 0, which was 0% of normal, or here 9, which was 20% of normal. Over here 28, 311% of normal. I don't care about the percent of normal. I'm interested in the raw data. So it's structured to say, here's one page, percent of normal, and then here is the actual data. So ultimately, I want to be able to say on November 4th, 2008, at this state in this city, that's how much rain we got. And be able to have that into just kind of a table that I would be able to build a graph. How could you just import this into Excel? Yeah, we could import this to Excel and it would kind of look sort of like this. Could I graph it? No, there's no chance that I can make a good graph. So I want to kind of build a good, I want to extract the data out of this and just get a block of data in Excel. So that's where we're headed. All right, any questions before we dive in? All right, so I've got a brand new blank workbook. I'm going to insert a module. Now it's important that I have saved this already and that the file is located in the same place as those text files are, because I'm going to use the path of where this workbook is to be able to find those text files. So let's do this. Let's sub process data. And we'd probably make some kind of loop. And we've done this before where we, kind of find the files, loop through them and send them somewhere. So we may not even actually fill that one in. Let's make another one here called process one file. And this one, we're going to pass a file path to it. So this one will have something to do to find the files and actually iterate across. And then we'll have something for debugging. So we can just run one at a time. And it's just going to call process one file and send it the path for one of these files. We'll ask for the path, concatenate on the application path separator. Adjust my chair a bit. And then concatenate on the name of the file that we're testing with. Which is that. Okay. So at this point now we should have a string, or should have received a string called file path that is the path of one file to work on. So what we're going to see here now is how do we go about opening just opening a file as a raw file, not opening a workbook, but just opening a file in VBA. And here's how we go about doing it. So let's just go ahead and say open. And then we're going to give it the path that we're after, the full path to the file. We then say for, and then we say, what are we going to do with this? And this is from the perspective of our program. We're opening that file for input. We're not putting data into the file. We're putting data into our program from the file. And so it's for input. If we opened it for output, would be writing data out to the file. Now, these statements that we're using go back to the 1970s, before the days of object-oriented programming. And so, today, if they were writing this, there would be some object involved that has methods and so forth. But this is before objects and methods. And so it's possible for us to say, I want to open up 4 or 5 different files all at the same time. Maybe I'm going to open up 3 for reading data in and 1 for writing data out. And I need to somehow keep track of which file is which. And so the way we do that is by assigning a number to it. And so we say, I'm going to open that file for input as number, crosshatch symbol, as number 1. And so now this is my number 1 file. I could, when I want to refer to this for this file, for doing some kind of file operations, I'm going to tell it it's this file number 1 that I'm working with. So a little bit different than we've worked with so far. No objects and methods here. It's just kind of old school. Now, before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and close that file. So I'll say close number 1 at the end. And so that will kind of close it, take off any lock that we put on the operating system for it, so that someone else could move it, copy it, delete it, or whatever, which they can't do while we have it open. And then we'll do stuff inside of here. I'll probably go ahead and tab things in from this level as well. Okay. Now, there's several ways that we can go about reading text files. One is to just read one character at a time. You can say just read a character or read a certain number of characters. Now, the trick here is, and actually it's one of the things that this approach to working with files is really good with. Let's see, where am I? Is that it's possible for me just to read this whole file into memory and then just deal with it. But how many of you have worked with like really large text files? Anyone worked with a text file that was over 100 gigabytes, like in your work or anything? Yeah, so we have one student who's come across that. So this was written back in the time when we didn't have these huge text files, but we didn't have very much memory either. And so today, now we've got lots and lots and lots of memory, but we have way huger files as well. And so one of the nice things about this approach is that even though I could read the whole file into memory, I don't have to. I literally could just say, go get me the next character off of this file and let me look at it. Or, as is commonly done, to say, you know what, I want to process this file one line at a time. And so there's actually a statement that will allow me to just read one line off the file, and that's what we're going to do. But we could say an arbitrary number. You tell me how many records. You could say just, or I'm sorry, how many characters, or read the whole thing. Now, how does it know where the end of a line is? Well, this file is actually one continuous stream of data, right? I think we talked about the ASCII table. Did we talk about the ASCII table in this class? I think we did. So every character has a number underneath it that tells us, that's not the best picture I've ever seen, but it'll do the trick. Oh, that's better. So, right, I said capital A is 65. So there's the number 65. That means capital A. This is the chart that maps between the numeric representation of a character and what you see as the character. Well, over here, the first 32 are non-printable characters. And these two, number 10 and number 13, taken together in the Windows operating system are carriage return and line feed, right? Advance the paper, move the print head back. And so those are like signals you would send to the printer to tell it to do something. But as we kind of went from this world of everything is printed into storing files, we kind of said the same thing. Well, that's the end of a line. Let's just go ahead and use that same character sequence for the end of a line here. And so when I say read a line, what the VBA interpreter does, it kind of scans forward until it finds that next line feed carriage return sequence, and then it brings in that whole set. So we will be working with this one line at a time. And here then is how we read a line. I'm going to need a variable to hold that line. And so let me just go ahead and create a variable called one line as a string. And then I will do my line input statement. So I say line input, it says, which file are you reading from? I'm reading from number 1. And what variable should I put this file in? One line. Okay, so I'm going to run my code to this point. I've got a breakpoint here, and that should kind of get me to where that code is ready to go. So now I should have the first line from that file in one line. And there it is. It's read that line in. It's sitting, that first line is sitting in that variable. Show me how comfortable you are with what we've done so far in 0 to 5. 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, 5, 3. Okay. So now let's start thinking about what we're going to have to do to build this data. First thing I'm going to want over here, let me just go ahead and kind of put the columns in that I'm after. I'm going to need a date. Don't let my wife hear me say that. I mean, I need a date with her, and I also need a date for when this data comes in. So what else am I going to want? Where's my data file? I'm going to need the date. I think I'm going to need the state. city, and then precipitation. Is that it? Is that going to be the data that I'm after? Here we go. Oh, there's this thing called a call. I don't know what a call is, but let's go ahead and bring the call in. And then precipitation. Okay, so the date is like the first thing I'm after. Now it's a little unfortunate in this file. There's no one place that the date goes for that number. So I can tell it's November. I can tell it's the 4th. I don't know the year. Go to the top. Oh, here's the year. The year is on my second line. In fact, the month, I know a little bit. I've played around with these files a little bit. Let me just show you another one to kind of convince you of something. Okay, where's my list of files? I think it's this one. Nope, maybe it's this one. Yeah, here we go. So this one, so this is November 8th, but you'll notice this is the very first part of November. So 1, 2, 3. Why are we only showing 3 days? Normally we show 7 days. Why only 3? Because we're not going to put 2 months in the same file. So the other 4 days of this week were in October. They're in their own file. Okay, so that's good to know. That means that this part right here is going to tell me the month and the year that all this data is for. So let's go ahead and get that. Let's go ahead and pull that data out. By the way, you may say, wow, I just don't see myself ever having to deal with a file like this. But the techniques that we're learning today, how to parse a whole file of text, are going to be really useful for us when we get together next time, because we're going to be pulling web pages down. And what is a web page? What is HTML? It's a text file. And so when you say, hey, I've got to get this data from a web server that's got the data I'm after, I'm going to have to parse through that data. So these tools that we're learning on this simple text file are going to serve us well when we have to start now parsing through HTML text to be able to get the data that we're kind of taking off of a web page. So that's, this is, we probably don't have to access these kind of files all that often. When we do, it's nice to have seen it once, but the tools of text, of parsing large blocks of text, have really broad applicability. Okay, so I'm going to need to let me get these things out of here. I'm going to need to get that right there. So I've read the first one in. I don't need anything off that first line. So what I'm going to do is just read the next line. How do I read the next line? I'll just call that again. So this says read a line from number 1, put it in one line. This says read a line from number 1, the next line from number 1, put it in one line. What happens to what used to be in one line? Poof, it's gone, overwritten. So I'm going to go ahead and execute that line now. And we should be able to, let me clear this off. Now that's got the second line in it. Okay. Any thoughts from the things that we've covered earlier in class? How should we go about picking off November of 08 on this line? Say it again. Or did someone give an answer? I didn't hear it. And it's got to be something that we think would work for every file. So we can't look for an NOV. We can't like do in-string for NOV. That's no good. Any thoughts? Number, oh, like do some kind of a like a pattern search. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. That sounds interesting. I don't know how to do a pattern search in VBA. We could, so it turns out VBA supports the use of regular expressions. So how many of you say, oh yeah, I'm comfortable with regular expressions? Like one. of you here. So it's pretty common in other programming environments. It doesn't show up that much, that often in the examples that I see out there in the wild on VBA. So it turns out we could do a pattern match like that. That's way more overhead than we need to do. There's a much simpler approach to this. And here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking if I was just to split this into an array based on the presence of this dash, then I would get this in the first part of the array, and then I would have this in the second. Oh, that's no good because I would get this in the third. Okay, maybe this. Maybe I will search for the first occurrence of a hyphen, and then I just need to take the next 6 characters. That sounds pretty good because I think these are going to be 3 digits. These are always going to be 2 digits. So I like that. So let me go ahead and give myself a variable to keep track of where I found that. POS, short for position, as an integer. Now let me just go ahead and do the in-string function here. So my position equals in-string, starting at the first character, looking at one line, looking for a hyphen. Now I'm going to need some variable to keep track of that piece of data that I'm finding. So let me call it MOYR, month year, as a string. So now I'm just going to set moyear equal to the mid of, and it's always, I'm always a little bit not quite sure exactly where that's going to go. So maybe before I write that code, I'm going to test it. So come up here and just comment that line out. Go ahead and run my position. And let's just come play with that. So mid of MOYR, starting at position and taking 6. Is that how I want it? Oh, mid of, it's not the mid of moyear. That's what I'm making. It's the mid of 1 month. So actually, it looks like I want to take 7. Yeah, so that's going to give me hyphen nov hyphen 8. And I don't mind having this leading hyphen here because ultimately I'm going to put another number in front of this and drop it into a cell as one value. So I think I like it just like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring this and say that's what my month year is going to be, that expression. So now I've gotten the month and the year. And let's see. So the next time after is the state. Okay, so let's think about how we're going to go after the state. I don't think I want to look for this version of the state because I don't want to even deal with this whole block here that's summary information. So I think this is the one that I'm after. So how could I, before I even think, and it's a little bit problematic because I've got this kind of happening in 2 places, but what could I do to kind of say, you know what, I want to kind of go past this until I get to my percent. Oh, and actually before I need the state, I've got to get the day because the days happen before the state does. So I'm really trying to get this number next as going to be my day. And remember, with the approach I'm taking, I'm looking at one line at a time. So I only ever have visibility for a single line. What could I search for, or what kind of process could I do over and over again until I know I've gotten to the next block of data that I'm after? What could I look for that would kind of get me to that point? This is a big part of programming. It's like, wow, I have no idea. I got to think of something creative, right? I mean, this is why a class like this is so really different from like an accounting class. In an accounting class, we're going to teach you the rules to apply. Here's the rules. We give you the input. You know the rule. You apply the rule. You get the output. There's no rule here. You got to think of something. You got to create something that you've never thought of before. Yep. Oh, so maybe this right here. I just search until I find this. Yeah, I like it because I don't think that's going to show up here. Doesn't. And if I look down here, there's another monthly one, and then this is going to get me to the next block here. Yeah, I think that would do it. So I could search until I find 24-hour precipitation in here. Just put myself into a loop, keep reading the next file until I get a one line that has that, and that's what lets me out of the loop. Now, if I did that, I would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines away from what I need, because this is going to be the next one that I have to process. So that wouldn't be too bad. I would just read it until I find this and then advance 5 lines. I don't see there being like more data in here. Like it's always going to be 5 lines down. So yeah, I like it. That should work. There's one I like better just because it's going to end up with a little bit simpler code. And that is this, the very line that I'm after is the only line that ends with NORM. So if I just keep reading until I find the last 4 characters of NORM, because this is %NM up here, then that will work. So let's go ahead and take that approach. It's fundamentally the same that what you asked for. It's just that this will actually get me to exactly the spot that I'm after. So I don't think I need any other control variable for this loop. So I'm just going to do a do loop right here. I'm going to do until the rightmost 4 characters of one line is equal to norm. And then inside this loop, I'm just going to read that again. Anytime I've got a do loop, I do want to put a do events into it, just in case things go haywire. I think I want to save before I go back and hit that. I just saved, and I'm going to run this through. It let me out of the loop. That's a good sign. Let me ask what one line is. And yeah, so now I've got that line. It's the line that ends in norm, and I've advanced to the part that has the next piece of data that I'm after. Now, this is a little bit problematic because I've got 7 numbers that I've got to keep track of here. I guess I could find the first one. Well, no, because I don't know there's going to be 7. Like on that one that's the beginning of the month only has 3. Better just kind of read them all in. So any thoughts on this one? I need to extract out that block. Let me kind of compare that to my other, got another file here somewhere. So here's my one that has fewer columns. What do you think? How can I get out just that set of numbers off this line that I've got? So how many of you have done text to columns in Excel? Done text to columns on something? I would guess that's most of you. You haven't done text to columns? You've never done text to columns? Oh, you have, just didn't want to vote. Yeah, okay. There's kind of 2, as soon as you say I want to do text to columns, what's your first choice? You immediately get a choice between two approaches. What is it? Delimited or fixed width. Yeah, and I think thinking about this in terms of fixed width would be pretty good, because even when I've only got the 3 columns here, let me line these up. Oh, I think I'm zoomed to a different level, because these things should, there we go. Yeah, so even when I've only got 3, my, oh, let me hope I was on the right one here. Yeah, these are still starting over here in the same. And so I think if I just kind of pick something up here in the middle and said, you know what, that's my data. Now do something to get rid of the spaces, and we should be getting down there. So why don't we go ahead and kind of pick up everything after this L. So let me just find out how many characters that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So if I start with the 20th character and then take, I don't want to count that long. So let me have VBA do the counting. Start at the 20th character and take the next 40 characters or 44 characters. Then that's going to get me the ones that I'm after. So let me go ahead and declare something to hold that. Now I'm going to want to treat this as a string first, and then I'm going to want to split it into an array. And so I could use 2 different variables for that, or I could use a single variable of type variant. And then it can actually switch between being an array and being a string. So let me dim days as a variant. And now that I've got, maybe put a little comment in here. One line has the days data. So let me say that days equals the mid of one line, starting at the 20th character, taking the next 44 characters. So now I've got that. Now I can use trim to get rid of the opening and close the space on the front and the end. But what about that space in the middle? There's a way to do this in Excel. There's a function in Excel that would do just what I'm after. Anyone know what it is? That would take like multiple subsequent or multiple spaces in the middle of a string and collapse them all down to one. Yeah, it's trim. The trim function inside of Excel works a little bit differently from the trim in VBA. We're going to want to use both of them here. But if I was just to say worksheet function dot trim and pass days to it, then that's taking off the leading. Oh, we don't have to take off. It takes off the leading and trailing, and it brings this, brings us down to just one space in between. Nice. So let me I could do this all on one line, but I'm gonna do it in several steps. So let me run that, and days now will be equal to that. So now I should be able to just split that based on a space. And I think if I don't, I think telling it the space is optional. If I don't tell it a space, it will assume I mean space, but I'll go ahead and specify it. So now this should give me an array. I can ask the upper boundary. Got 7 days, so my upper boundary should be 6. Yeah, it's looking good. So I should be able to look at days sub 0, and I should get that 4. Sub 6 should be the 10. Okay, so now I've pulled that block of days off, and I've got the days set aside. I don't need them yet until I start writing my data out, but I've got days now recorded for this block. My month and year is going to be the same for this whole report. Oh, days is going to be the same too. I think if we look down this report, we're going to see this is always for November 4th through 10th. We could look through all this data, and it's always the 4th through the 10th. Good. Okay, so next thing I'm looking for is going to be the state. And I think the state's just going to be the line that has 3 asterisks. Oh, it's probably a space. What I don't know is it always is the first 5 characters always space star 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 space. You just kind of peek ahead. It is for that one, for that one, for that one. Yeah, that looks like that's going to be reliable. So I'm going to go put myself into another loop and just get down to that line. So I'll copy this loop from norm. And I'm going to do until the left 5 characters is equal to space star 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 space. Let's see what we got in there now. Yeah, looking good. So I think to go after this one, I'm just going to take that whole line. I'm going to replace the asterisk with the space with the. I'll replace the asterisk with spaces, and then I'll pull out the. I'll just get rid of leading and trailing spaces with trim. So I'll need a variable for this. State. I wonder if state's a reserved word. It may not like this. Like state, okay, for a variable name. So now state is going to be equal to replace one line, looking for a star, replacing it with a, actually I can replace it with nothing. Let's get rid of those. And then let me just trim that. And that should give me state. Yeah, I like it. So I've got my state. I think from here, I'm just going to read 2 more lines. I don't think I have to look for anything to find this. It's just going to be 2 lines down. So I'll just advance a couple of lines. Actually, I've got state. I want to read 1, 2. Yeah. Read 2 more lines should give me the first one. Fabio, we need your help. How come some have a dollar and some have a star? Is there something fundamentally different about this than this? No idea? Are those like both city names that you recognize? Okay. So yeah, I don't know what these are. Now, so I think we're going to want to just kind of get rid of that first character and start with the second line here. It's tempting to try to split, just kind of split this, maybe send this into worksheet function trim to get all the spaces down and then just split it. But what's the problem if I try to split this data that way? If I say just split this line and then we pull the different parts off the line that I need. You can see it by comparing the first 2 lines in this data table. Some of the city names have spaces too. And so I'm going to get the city name put into 2 cells. Everything will be shifted off. And so I think I want to treat these first 2 pieces of data as fixed width. And then I'll do the same trick that we did to get the dates to be able to pull this data in. Because fortunately, when there's nothing there, it's not just blank. It's they put a little dash to say I'm not sure what that means. It means maybe no data. It's different than 0. Trace is here, but I think we'll be okay there. So I think I'm going to pull this as the next, starting at the second character and taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Starting at the second character and taking 11 should get me the city name. Okay, whoops. So I'll run my next 2 line inputs. So one line now should have that in it. That looks good. Okay, so I've got a city and I've got a call number. So let me go ahead and get those as variables. I'm not going to be doing any math on it, so I think I'll take that in as a string as well. So I'm parsing it from a string. I don't really have a compelling reason to turn it into a number here in my code, so I'll leave it as a string. Okay, so at this point, I'm ready to say my city is equal to the mid of one line, starting at the second and taking, did I say 11? Is that right? And then my call number will start at 14 and looks like it takes start at 14 and take 5. Mid of one line, starting at the 14th character and taking 5. Oh, I probably should trim this because I know I'm going to get trailing spaces on most of these. So trim that. It looks like my call numbers are all the same width. So I don't have to worry about trimming that one. I'm just going to pull off the right data. Go ahead and run that data to that point. And let's see what we've got for our city and our call number. That's the city, isn't it? Yeah. And let's check our call number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whew, we're almost there to get the, we're almost where we could get the first piece of data written in, or the first line of data. We've got to get now the actual data. And that is going to be just a, almost identical to our, what we did to get the days. So I'm probably just going to make another array, another variant. I'll call it data as a variant. And where did we work with days? Yeah, so here's days. I'm going to do the same thing with data. Because they line up just in the same way. So I should now be able to look at data sub 0. And let's see, looks like sub 6 and 4 should actually have some numbers in it. So 4 has the 9, 5 has a 0, 6 has another number. So 908, 908. So it looks like we got that now into those arrays. I think we're ready to write out our first 7 rows of data into our Excel sheet. So let's go ahead and do it. All right, since I'm going after the sheet now, I'm going to need some variables for that. So let me dim R as a long integer. Let's set R equal to 2. And that'll give me some reference to be able to work on this on the sheet. We have the data for one city. Let's write it to the sheet. Okay, we've got to write, oh, actually we have it, yeah, for one city and for 1 week. So I think I'm just going to loop across however big my array is. I don't want to go from 0 to 6 because I know I've got this file that only has 3 coming up. So let's go ahead and make a loop here. I think I'm going to need a control variable for like a for loop. So let me dim X as an integer. Byte would have been fine as well. For X equals 0 to the upper boundary of data. And data should be exactly the same size as days, so it wouldn't matter which one I'm looking at. All right, so what am I going to say? I'm going to say my sheet, which is sheet 1, dot cells, row number R, column number X plus 1, so X is starting at 0, dot value equals, in this case, I'm trying to put the date in. So I've got my month year, I need my day. So days sub X concatenated with mow year. Let me just see if that one puts in just what I'm after. See, I don't think I skipped anything here. Do need to start the loop here though. I'll go one line at a time here. Ooh. Oh, I haven't defined what R is yet. So I've missed way up here. I've got R equals 2. I haven't run that line yet. So let me just go ahead and stop this and we'll run it again. We'll run it again to our, you run it right to here. Okay, so that should have put our first, or should put our date in there. So we've got 4 November, and Excel even recognized that as a date, right? So it's got the underlying date, and then it's just showing it this way, formatted that way because it assumes that's the way we want to see it. That's what we put in there. Very nice. So now state, city, call, and precip. State, city, call, and precip. So this will be X plus 2 is going to be my state. X plus 3, city. X plus 4, call. And X plus 5 then should be data sub X. See how those look. Yeah, okay. So we've got our first row of data in. Yikes, it took us more than an hour to get the first, almost an hour to get the first row in. Well, good news. Once we've got the first row, the rest of them are going to be pretty similar. So now I want to do this part over and over again. But how can I tell when I'm done? Right? Because now, if I move to the next line, oh, we better actually find where we do want to go back to, because we want to go all the way back to the point where we're getting the city, right? Yeah, city is the first thing that we're getting there. So I want to go right to here, all the way to here. And I want to do this, I'll tab this in. I want to do this whole block over and over again until something. So let me go ahead and put a do and a loop, and do events. How can I tell when I'm done? Oh, in fact, I better, right here at the end of the loop, I better get my next line of data. So where is reading a line? Okay, so this will get my next line of data in, and then I'll go back to the top of the loop. I'm pulling that out and writing it into the sheet. Okay, so, wow, that's nice. Look at that. There is an entirely blank row at the end of my data. And I'm trying to highlight this row. There's nothing on that row. So I think I can do this until one line equals a 0 length string. I'm not entirely sure that's blank, but since I've got to do events in here, I think that'll be okay. I'll stop after the loop. So if there's some character there that I can't see, this loop's not going to exit. And I'm going to get lots of data really fast. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, for sure. And so we've got to go to the next line. We've got to increment R. That's what you're going to tell me over here as well. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. R equals R plus 1. And let's get this there. Maybe before I cut it loose, I'm going to go ahead and just F8 a little bit through here. Okay, we put the next line in. Oh, wait a minute. I'm only getting the first day on this. So I'm missing something here. And that is, I'm going until the upper boundary. And I need a new row in this. So my R plus 1 needs to go inside this loop. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. So I'm getting the 5th, 6th, 7th. Why am I getting tabbed over each time? So this is the row. X. Ah, it's not X. I only need out here. X isn't involved with this at all. Go a little bit more here. Looks like I finished that first one. Okay, so now it looks like we've gotten down here. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and kind of get rid of this try, stop my code, and run it again until I hit the stop. Oh, that's bad. Oh, yeah, good point. Let's do this. I'm going to move these over here. Right, so it's taking, those got, when I put the dates in there, they got formatted as dates. So when I put these numbers in, it goes, oh, that's a date. Let me go ahead and erase these. That should get rid of that formatting on those columns. That looks better. Hey, I'm feeling pretty good about it. We've got the first page. Next step is find out how do we get to the next page. In fact, let's take a look. Where's the next place that we need to go on this? That's not the one I want. Okay, so this let us out of the loop. We don't need to get the date again. The date's the same. So I think we want to just keep going until we get to our next norm, don't we? Oh, we've already got a loop that does that. Right up here, this thing's already going to continue doing that until we get to norm. So I think what I want to do is just take this whole block, tab it in, and give myself another do. So, got too many loops here. Let me go ahead and put a comment on this one. So this loop is one block of data. That's what's going through the one block of data. This loop is controlling the whole page, controlling the whole data set. And this one is one line of data. Okay, so this is going to loop me up to the top here. I'm going to keep counting until I get to my next norm. So let me just F8 through this a bit. Let me put a stop right here. And we'll run to here. So now if we look at one line, again, we've got the next one of these. Oh, you know what? We don't need to get the dates again. They're going to be the same. It wouldn't hurt us to get them again. Yeah, and I don't think we can just keep looking until we can't look for this because we're going to hit that one on the next percentage page. So I think the code's a little simpler just to say, hey, loop until we find norm, even though it means we're redefining days. We could shave a few milliseconds off of this if we tried to kind of skip this, but I think we're okay here. So let me just kind of step through this. And it looks like we're writing out the next block. So let's go take a look at that block. Yeah, so now we've got the next state and we're working on the next cities. Yeah, I like it. Now, the problem is once we get to the very last page, let's kind of go think about what that's going to look like. So we're going to get the very last Indonesia. Is Indonesia in Brazil now? So this must not just be Brazil. Maybe Brazil just happens to be the top one. Good. The good news is we still have the blank line at the end of this data, but according to our code, we're going to, at this point, we're going to try to keep looping until we find percent or until we find norm at the end of a line, and we're not going to find it. So we need something up there when we're looking for norm to tell us when we're done. Fortunately, this file, there's a function called EOF, end of file, and if I give it the file number, it'll return true or false. Have I tried to read past the end of the file? Now, I'm only into the second page of this file right now, so end of file here should be false. But once I try to read past the end of that line, it's going to turn to true. So I can use this to tell me if I've gotten to the end of the file. Yeah, I can't put the number in there. It's just got to be EOF1. So I think right here, every time we do an EOF, every time we read another line in here, which we're trying to find the next block, let's just say if EOF1, then exit. This is a little problem because I think this is this a do inside of a do? Oh no, this is my outermost do. So I can just say exit do. Oh no, you're right. I'm in this one. Yeah, so this would just let me out of this one and we would try to keep moving on. This is the one thing about VBA that I think is a little bit problematic, is that there's no way to really elegantly say, you know, take me up out of 2 do loops. I can exit the one I'm in. And so there's a couple ways I could do this. It happens that on this one, I'm done. At this point, I'm done with this file. I could exit sub and that's okay. But I would like to show you how do you go out kind of to an arbitrary level. And what I'm about to show you is ugly. And you can abuse what I'm about to show you. This is like the only valid use for what I'm about to show you. And it's the go-to statement. Go-to statement just lets you arbitrarily go to a different part of the code. At this point, go over here. And if you use the go-to statement to like move around in your code, you're going to make code that you can't possibly comprehend. It is, in fact, it was like 1968, a guy named Dijkstra, I don't remember his first name. He wrote a paper. It is one of the most heavily cited papers in computer science history ever. The title of it is Go To Considered Harmful. And that's the way we used to code like crazy. Oh yeah, just jump to this location, jump to this location, then jump to this location. We would even make loops that way. We would use go to build a loop. So here's what we can do. Instead of saying exit do, which would only get me out of this loop, I'm going to say then go to, and then I'm going to make a label. So I'm going to give it some name to go to. And I'm going to call it out of all loops. This label we have to put somewhere. And so what I'm saying is I'm going through this process. If I hit this thing here, I get in the end of it. I just want to go out of this loop. Exit do doesn't do it. I want to get to the end of this one. So let me go down and find where that loop is. That's here. And so here I'm going to say out of all loops, and I'll put a colon, and that will make it a label. That's something that I can just jump to now. So I can jump out of all these loops and go to that label. And that will close the file and exit the sub procedure. Yeah, so I probably don't just want to say exit sub up there because I got to close this file. It probably would be okay to say close file one exit sub, but I do want to show you this technique. And even though you could use this in a really bad way, this is the one time where you say this is probably the right way to get out of multiple loops. This go to statement. Okay, I am going to stop this code, and I think I can run it again. It's going to pull all the data in. So let me just run it. I've got some stops in here. I'll have to get rid of those. I'll find those easily enough. And I think that's it. So we've got 900 rows of data all the way down here to Indonesia. Other things I might want to do is do something different with trace. I don't know what to do with trace. What do you set trace to? Maybe make it something that would be graphable, maybe 0.1 or something, 1/10 of a millimeter. That's not very much, even though it's probably not especially accurate. It's saying there was some, but it wasn't measurable. Okay, so at this point, we don't have time to do it, but at this point, our next step would be to just make this so instead of it being called from the test, it's being called over and over again for all the files, and that should bring in that set of data. So that's kind of the process of parsing through an arbitrary text file. It is a really creative thing because you got to think, how am I going to get after that piece of data? How am I going to get after that piece of data? Any questions? Overall, show me your comfort level, 0 to 5. With this 5, 5, 4, 3, 5, 5. Okay, excellent. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.